Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic, hope you're doing well, and today I'll be talking about the first couple of episodes of WandaVision, as I just finished a couple minutes ago, the second episode, and this is a show that is now going to be released weekly onto Disney+, and so first two episodes in, and I honestly have no idea how to feel about the show, because the first two episodes very much play into this 1950s sitcom personality type, where it's literally 4:3 aspect ratio, black and white, and it is essentially, in a lot of ways, very similar to shows like I Love Lucy and Bewitched and other classic 1950s black and white TV sitcom series, and in that capacity, I think it's actually pretty clever. It actually feels very much like a 1950s sitcom, and I think they do a very good job of really capturing those same elements. There's also a couple of moments in between, in the middle of every single episode, where they even have a fake basically a fake advertisement for some product, and you have actually references to to Stark Industries, and you also have references to even Hydra at one point as well, which I thought was kind of intriguing and interesting. And throughout the entire series, and I guess, again, this might be somewhat spoilery. Again, there's only been 2 episodes so far, and we really don't know a whole lot about what's going on here, but from what all we can tell is that these two are basically trapped inside of some kind of sitcom universe, and the outside world is trying to basically get in some capacity. Like in the most recent episode, in the second one, there's a moment where this radio starts to freak out, and Wanda starts to hear, who's doing this to you, Wanda? And so there's the question being raised about, okay, what exactly is going on here? And I think that most people, when they saw the trailers for this, that's why I don't really think it's that much spoiler to talk about these things, obviously realized that there's no way they just randomly decided to set this in a 1950s sitcom universe. This likely has something to do with them being either put in here through some mental barrier or break from reality or something to that effect. We don't know exactly what it is now. In fact, at the end of the most recent episode, there was all of a sudden this new introduction of a full color scheme. Up to this point, there had only been a couple of moments where you actually had certain objects showing, signs of color. So it almost feels that Pleasantville vibe. If you've ever seen that movie where it's a black and white world, where eventually aspects of color start to be added in when people start to make these self-discoveries. So I don't know. It's just this weird thing. It's just, it's got really great acting throughout it. I mean, I've always been a big fan of Elizabeth Olsen. I think that she has done a great job. Paul Bettany, of course, is just fantastic, and there's really not much more that can be said about her, or rather about him. I will say, though, I think my favorite actress and favorite person in this show so far is actually the character played by Kathryn Hahn. I've always found her to be pretty funny in the movies that I've ever seen her in, and she plays the neighbor of Scarlet Witch, played by Elizabeth Olsen, and she plays a perfect stereotypical neighbor in this 1950s world, and she really just hams up the performance so well that honestly I could totally buy into Kathryn Hahn being in a show in the 1950s and fitting in very well within it if she was actually living in that time. I think that Elizabeth Olsen, in my opinion, is the one that feels most out of place. I don't know exactly why. Maybe that'll come into play as the series goes on as to why she's never really fully on board. Again, she has moments where she fits into it, but I think that this style and I think that this genre is not really her strongest suit. I think Paul Bettany actually does very well, fits very well, kind of reminds me, not necessarily completely of a Dick Van Dyke, but I think kind of fits into it in that more naturalistic way than Elizabeth Olsen does, or as Kathryn Hahn does. And so if you're a fan of Kathryn Hahn's type of comedy, I think that you will like her in this series, because even though it is unique and it is different, I think that she does it pretty well so far. It's being labeled as a drama, mystery, romance, sitcom, superhero, and even though obviously there are superheroes being mentioned and superheroes being featured in this, so far to me is very much this sitcom mystery, because you don't know exactly what is going on, though I'm imagining that most people at this point are trying to basically say, okay, I'm going to make some predictions as to what I think is actually going to happen when everything is said and done, but it is still interesting nonetheless to see these things happen. So let's go ahead and just read a little bit from the Wikipedia article about WandaVision and its background. It says, it is an American television miniseries created by Jack Schaefer for the streaming service Disney Plus, based on the Marvel Comics character of Wanda Maximoff as, Scarlet Witch and Vision. Set in the MCU, it shares continuity with the films of the franchise and takes place after the events of the film Avengers Endgame. WandaVision was produced by Marvel Studios, with Schaefer serving as head writer and Mac Shackman directing. And I think that so far the writing has actually been pretty good. I think that it's, again, felt very much reminiscent reminiscent of the 1950s style. I kind of wonder, to be honest, about when this eventually, as I assume it will, breaks away from the 1950s sitcom style, of whether or not the writing will continue to be as strong as it is. But at the same time, too, it is something where I honestly have not found myself really laughing all that much at it. Now, it's not being labeled as a comedy, but I do feel like it's kind of trying to play on those comedic tropes, and there's a couple of moments of levity for sure, because there's this laugh track that you have and you hear throughout the entire series, or rather at least for the first 2 episodes of the series, and it definitely is something where the jokes being made are very classic 1950s-esque style jokes. But I honestly just think that it's just so weird, because you're looking at 2 actors who we know exist now in 2021 and are playing characters that have been established in at least the MCU, in this Marvel world, as of just the last 5 to 10 years. And so to me, it's just kind of weird to see them being pushed back into this style without knowing further more about it. And that is something I think find interesting. I've heard a couple people so far saying that this show seems to have been made and to have been built for the binge model, because it is this mystery, and it just seems weird to say, okay, now I gotta wait a week to dive further into the story. To be honest, I feel like this is a show that I could easily kind of fall out of any sense of wanting to see it if it keeps this week-to-week mentality and this week-to-week schedule, which it looks like it will for the entirety of its run. And it's just, honestly, I just think that that's just how it's set up. I just don't think that it was really built for this model to be released as such. I think it really was, just like many shows nowadays to be released on streaming, are built more so for that binge model. And I think that might end up hurting its week-to-week numbers, because though you might have some people having some interest in it, knowing that I have to wait a week, it's like I don't really think I don't have that desire, I guess you could say, to watch next week's episode, right? It's not that it's bad. It's not that I'm not enjoying it to some extent. It's just a weird sensation. Again, I'm not really in love with it, but I'm still intrigued by it, because I honestly want to see where it goes, but not enough for me to care as much as I would about other series having that week-to-week schedule. So I think there is something absolutely to be said about it not being really made all that well, as far as, breaking it up into this new structure. But I think that is more to do and more to blame on people like Kevin Feige and the people running things behind the scenes, having it established and basically trying to adopt this week-to-week mentality, because obviously it worked very well for The Mandalorian, but I feel like that show was very much built and much better made for a week-to-week separation versus this show, which again just seems more apt to be one that most people could watch probably as a binge, because I think that once whatever the twist is, or whatever the the source of them being thrust into this 4:3 aspect ratio black and white 1950s sitcom world is, will make things a little bit more interesting and make one want to go back and rewatch things, maybe just to see how those things connected, and maybe if there was anything that anyone missed at any point in the past. And just to go ahead and to go into the actual episodes themselves, as you can see, there's only been 2 episodes that have been released thus far. They were just released earlier this morning, very similar to how they released the Mandalorian episodes, but I'm trying to see just how many episodes there actually are at this point, because I'm not really seeing much about that information. Let me see if again, that should just bring me down here. So we don't know, I guess, how many episodes there are going to be. I'm sure I could find that information somewhere. Maybe I can find it in this bit right here. It says, WandaVision premiered its first 2 episodes and will run for 9 episodes until March 5th. It is the first series in Phase 4 of the MCU. The series was praised by critics for its homages to past sitcoms and the performances of Olsen and Bettany, though the non-sitcom storyline was criticized by some as not being as original. Okay, so that is interesting. So basically, it looks like people that have been, access media types who have been allowed to see the entire series already have already gotten to the non-sitcom type storyline, and apparently it's not all that original. So very sad to hear that, but I'll have to wait and see how this plays out, and of course, I'll give my thoughts. I might try and do every single week, since it's going to be releasing on a weekly schedule. But then, as I said, it's one of those things where I honestly don't know if I have as much interest in it. Not because it's bad, just because, I don't know. It's just kind of weird. Not to mention, WandaVision, not really 2 characters that I think a lot of people would want to see a show featuring. Again, it'd be one thing if it was, Robert Downey Jr. in an Iron Man show, where I think more people would say, I want to see this every single week. And again, there's nothing wrong with Elizabeth Olsen or Paul Bettany. It's just they're 2 characters and 2 actors in a universe filled with people. And even though I think this might be one of the better things to come out of Phase 4 of the MCU, I don't know. It's still kind of weird. I'm still kind of scratching my head on this one. But anyway, have you seen the first 2 episodes of WandaVision? Let me know your thoughts on them in the comment section below. If you like this video, please smash the like button, smash the rumble button if you're watching over there. I also upload these videos over on Minds, which is a great social media platform. And in fact, I am almost exclusively posting content there. So if you want to hear thoughts about the next time I watch this show, instant thoughts, reactions, reviews, other things like that, go check me out over on Minds. I'm trying to step away more so from Twitter because Twitter has been accessible for a very long time, but now especially since they're going after free speech, I honestly don't want to give them as much attention. So check out my Minds account. Use the referral link in the video description so that you can be able to access it as well. And also, I get a little bit of a crypto bump if you use that link and go through the process of signing up. If I guess I had to give a grade, because I like to give grades for, I guess the overall series, I would give that these, first 2 episodes together a solid B. And it's mostly just because I don't know how I'm going to feel about these episodes once the full story pans out. But it is what it is at this point. Thank you all for your attention. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my January 2021 Patreon and Subscribestar members: Albertus Magnus, Ali C83, Andrew Hoyle, animation commentator Brian P, Dion, Divex, Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, The Hunky Chunky Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jacob Juice, Jay, Jeffrey Toone, Jonathan Carney, Laura Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody and his beautiful twin with the beautiful hair, Orange Hat Reviews, On to June, Out of Step with Reality, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Steve Glasker, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B. Thank you very much for being my Patreon members. And also a huge shout out to my Subscribestar peeps: Stan 4, John B, Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, Darkstar 57, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., US 888209 Fast, Dean Heiss, J-Rod the Beer Guru, Nevedon G. Adams, and ZK Man. You guys are all freaking amazing. Thank you so very much for being supporters. If you want your name shouted out, please consider joining on Patreon, where for $1 a month, you can get your name shouted out at the end of every single video and live stream. For $5 a month, you get access to that, and also you get access to exclusive giveaways, where I give away 4Ks, Blu-rays, digital codes, etc. $10 a month will get you all that, plus also access to a special podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger. Lots of fun. We do Q&As from that as well, so you get access to asking those Q&As, asking us any wide variety of questions. And for $25 a month, you get all of that stuff, plus you get to be featured once a month on the Chosen of Valhalla live stream. And also for that first month, you get a free t-shirt shipped anywhere throughout the world. So if you want to consider any of those things, please check out the links in the description below, where you can find my Subscribestar and Patreon, and also other ways to support the channel. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.